Live.
Good morning. Welcome to this morning's special called board meeting. At this time, I need to determine a quorum, and before we can proceed with our meeting, board members, just so you know, since we're all virtual this morning, I'm going to pretty much call on you individually. If you would just respond when I call your name to notify us that you're present. Mr. Smith?
Mr. Smith is here.
Ms. Burns? Present. Mr. Hall?
Here.
Mr. George?
Here.
And myself, Cindy Fontana. Okay, we have enough to call this meeting to order. If we could all please say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the
of the
United
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, we need a board member to please make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Madam Chair, this is Mr. George. I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
All right, Mr. George has made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Mr. Smith, that was you, correct? Yes.
Correct.
Mr. Smith made second. Okay. All in favor? I'm going to go around and call everybody. Ms. Burns? Aye. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Mr. George?
Yes.
Okay. The meeting can now proceed. At this time, we're moving into the action part of our agenda, 4.1 action software purchase. And Dr. Aiken, I believe that is you. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay, just for a second, just for clarification, I'm just asking all board members, I know this came up last time and there was a lot of discussion, and I understand, Dr. Akins, that we do have others on the line, and I'm sure you'll introduce them in just a second, but I do encourage board members, if any of us have any questions or concerns, now is the time to ask before we take this to the floor for action. Okay? It's all yours, Dr. Aiken.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, at the board's request, since the meeting on Tuesday, we did ask for Apex Learning to send a new one-year proposal as opposed to the three-year proposal. I believe Mr. McPherson has had that, and I hope had a chance to look at it. And Dr. Blumenreich has been kind enough to add that, I think, to the documents. In addition, we do have several members from Apex Learning on the line. Ms. Kimberly Smith, if you can hear me, if you could please introduce yourself and the team that you have available and their titles.
Hi, I am Kimberly Smith. I am the account executive with the opportunity to work with Pender County Schools, and I have my colleagues here with me today. I have Todd Mahler, who is our Chief Product Officer, and I have Adele Terry, who is our Implementation Success Manager for the district.
And then members of the board, at Dr. Hill's request yesterday, Ms. Winstead and I also spoke with our counterparts in New Hanover to try to understand their approaches. And just a few minutes ago, I shared a table that kind of outlines what we were able to gather. And I know Mr. George was also able to share some slides from a recent presentation. Our current request would be, rather than ask for a three-year contract with Apex Learning, which would be to modify that and instead ask for a one-year contract with Apex Learning. I also have Dr. Lee and Ms. Winstead here who can also answer any questions relative to implementation for Apex Learning. So at this time, we certainly would avail ourselves and our Apex implementation representatives to any questions that we can help answer.
Okay, board members, this opens it up for all of us to ask any questions we may have at this time.
So just for clarification, the packet that Dr. B sent out last night at 10 something still shows the Exhibit A dates is August 20th, 21 through August 19th, 2024. So we're not voting on what is in the package, correct?
Correct, sir. Hopefully I correctly attached, just a few minutes ago, the revised copy that we received and
And Mr. George, not to interrupt, but in your email is the 1-year contract. So that just went out.
it should list August 20th
Yep.
of 2021 to August 19th of 2022. And Mr. McPherson, am I correct that you also have received it?
I have received it, and Mr. George, you are right. What was in the packet does say 24, but the version that I believe should be uploaded now is for 1 year. So, Mr. Bloomerite, or Dr. Bloomerite, if you would please confirm that for me.
Yes, it is in there, and everybody should have it. It's revision 2, or REV 2, to the packet, and the 1
I
year.
just got it at 9:38.
Yep.
I just got it. It just
Yep.
popped up.
All right. And 1 year should be right in there.
Where at in there? Because Exhibit A still shows the dates of August 20th, 21 through August 19th, 24.
Okay, it'll be after Exhibit D.
Okay.
Okay. So you are seeing it, right?
Yes, I see that part, yes.
Perfect. Perfect.
I have one question. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I guess this is for, Dr. Lee and Ms. Winstead. So can you just basically, because I know there's a lot of people who are tuned in, could you basically just go through and clarify what Apex does for us, county, for our students versus the difference? Because I know that's more credit recovery. And then what we're doing for those other students, more rigorous, and I think specifically when I think of it, and remember my background is mostly elementary and some middle, I just need clarification. What are we doing? The other part, not Apex, is for those children who are maybe looking into getting college credit for some classes. Is that correct? Am I understanding that?
So this is Ms. Winstead. So I definitely want to answer your question. So with Apex Learning, how we've used it in the district is for our high schools with credit recovery and our at-risk students. And so we've used it exclusively in the STAR Academy. So those students that are at risk and that attend the STAR pathway, we've used it exclusively with them, and we've used it for our at-risk students at the high school. So we've not used that product in the virtual academy. And so to differentiate those products and explain, so with the other students that are the virtual academy that we created in 2019, we used a different product so that Apex has a very limited amount of classes and electives and things like that. So we've not used that product with them in that way. We've only used it for our at-risk students, and it's worked really well. We've had them for about 10 years. With our other students,
for the traditional schools outside of what Asia works for.
You need to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Elisa Lee, Secondary Director. Sorry about that. In the traditional schools, to challenge our students, we use CCP courses with Cape Fear Community College, which that has been a long-standing partnership. We also have our AP courses, and our AP courses are offered either by our teachers or either through NCVPS. NCVPS also for our traditional schools serves some purposes of filling in gaps whenever we don't have teachers to fulfill certain courses. Some of our students may want Latin. Some of our students may want other courses that we don't offer face-to-face just because of our schedules. The last couple of years, we had started with some North Carolina School of Science and Math courses, and that was more geared towards our advanced learners because it is very rigorous and the pacing is expedited. So for the platforms that we've used in our traditional schools for students who are on track, who needed a little more, has been NCVBS, our CCP courses, and some in North Carolina School of Science and Math. We've also had some military families that have came in who are linked to like George Madison or other colleges. And so we just have to vet those programs. And if it's something that some of our other online platforms do not offer, we allow them to take that course. Up into, I think it was the last couple of years when Cape Fear Community College added aviation. One of our students wanted to take the aviation course, so we approved that student to take it with another community college because we didn't offer it in one of our programs. So that's the difference between what we offer as online platforms or options in our traditional schools versus what Ms. Winstead does in her program.
And I do want to go back to the virtual academy. So the virtual academy is separate than the STAR pathway. And what separates that is that we're really looking at more of our at-risk students and at-risk, various things that includes. But the virtual academy that we were asked to create, that we created, that we've used a different product for that, and that we've not used other products like piecemeal. We've used one singular product that we could have control over. And what I mean by that is that we actually are able to monitor our students' progress. We're able to log on as a student, work with the students. So they've used a virtual platform that allows for flexibility for the working student, for students that just want to be online. We pulled in a lot of our homeschool students. We're now pulling in some of those students that were attending CTAC. That virtual academy piece of it, we've used a different program, but we used one program to be able to support those students.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other board members, any questions, concerns? Apex is on the line, so if you have any questions or concerns,
as I've said in the past, I have no issue with Apex as a package. My issue is with what appears to be their parent company now, Edmentum. As you know, last year we had several issues with Edmentum not delivering a product, and we were promised things that took forever to get if we ever got them. So that is my hesitation about this whole contract. It's not the Apex part, it's not the credit recovery part, it's the parent company of Apex.
Ms. Smith, can you or your colleagues sort of speak to that? I know it's a concern that Ms. Winstead and I shared with you quite a while ago.
Absolutely. I can tell you that for the upcoming school year, there will be no changes to the way that we've delivered our program to the students there in Pender County schools. So the same service that your district has experienced over the last 10 years that we've worked with you will be consistent. It's not going to change.
And just to add to that, this is Todd Mahler. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Apex Learning. There will be no changes to the platform, meaning there will be no changes to functionality. There will be no changes to the courses that we offer. So every course that exists today will continue to exist for the upcoming school year. As part of this, we know how critical it is for our district partners to maintain continuity and minimize disruption. So we are committed, even as we become part of Edmentum, to ensuring that there are no changes for the upcoming school year.
So, Mr. McPherson, now the question goes to you. How do we ensure that I read the contract. I don't see where those promises are made in the contract.
Mr. George, I would like you to approve this contract subject to further legal review. I've got some issues with the exhibits, in addition to adding some additional language to address the statement that was just made by Apex Learning to ensure that continuity of service is guaranteed for the 21-22 school year.
Madam Chair, it's Mr. George. I have no further questions.
Okay. Does anyone else have any further questions before we make a motion? Okay. At this time, do we have a board member who would be willing to make the motion? And it needs to be worded as our attorney, Mr. McPherson, asked us to do so.
Can the attorney I apologize. Can the attorney reword that one more time, please?
Yes, sir.
Or repeat that?
Yes, sir, I can. The proposed motion would be, I move to approve the Apex Learning contract for the 21-22 school year, subject to legal review. That would be the end of the motion.
Okay. All right. All right, board members?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve a one-year subscription of Apex Learning in the amount of $63,790, subject to legal review.
All right, Ms. Barnes has made the motion. Do we have a second?
That's Mr. Smith. I'll second that motion.
All right, Ms. Barnes has made the motion. Smith is seconded. I will now go around and ask for votes from us board members. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. George?
No.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Okay. And based on that, we have 3 yeses and 1 no. Is that correct? Mr. McPherson, is that what you also heard?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. So moved, so carried. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Akins, and one from Apex and everyone who was there, Ms. Woodstead and Ms. Dr. Lee. We appreciate it. All right. At this time, we're moving now to 4.2, action item resolution regarding face coverings. And just an FYI, I'm going to ask our attorney, Mr. McPherson, if he will just kind of talk about where we were and where we are now. And Mr. McPherson, I understand that you're also going to read the resolution. Am I correct in all of that?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll turn it over to you now.
Fantastic. Good morning, board. This resolution that's before you has been a long time coming. I want to begin by giving a brief history of where the school districts in North Carolina have been, beginning in March of 2020 when we first experienced on a widespread COVID-19. So as you know, in March of 2020, all schools were required to close via executive order after the declaration of a state of emergency by Governor Roy Cooper. For the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year, all education via public school districts was done remotely. Beginning with the 2020-2021 school year, the creation of what is known as the Strong Schools Public Health Toolkit for K through 12 was adopted by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, and then was approved by the State Board of Education as the guidelines and directives for school districts for the 2020-2021 school year. These guidelines set out a blueprint or a map for how school districts could open. In addition to that regulatory agency approving those guidelines, the Governor Cooper's executive order at the time also directed that school districts follow all guidelines from Health and Human Services and the Department of Public Instruction. Fast forward through the 2020-2021 school year, Pender County Schools used the Strong Schools Toolkit as it was required by state law and by its regulatory agency to comply with. Most recently, Governor Cooper's Executive Order 2020 directed that school districts comply with the face covering requirements found in the Strong Schools Toolkit and moving forward. On Wednesday of this week, Governor Cooper announced that he was going to allow Executive Order 2020 to expire on July 30, 2021. So once that expires, the requirement from the governor regarding your compliance with the Strong Schools Toolkit also goes away. However, because the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and the State Board of Education have directed that you follow the Strong Schools Toolkit for operations of schools. At this time, you are required to comply with the requirements that are found therein. Also on Wednesday, Governor Cooper announced that the Strong Schools Toolkit, with the assistance of Secretary Mandy Cohen for the Health and Human Services, announced that the mask mandate, as it has been called, or the requirement that face coverings be worn in all K-12 public schools indoors was going away, and that it became the option of local school boards to determine whether or not to require face coverings or masks for the 21-22 school year, which is something that I know lots of communities, including yours, have been addressing and wanting the option to make decisions for yourself on the local level. So the reason this element is particularly important is because whenever COVID-19 originally reared its ugly head, the General Assembly passed a broad civil immunity for all persons, which included governmental entities such as the Pender County Board of Education, that limited someone's ability to file suit or attempt to get damages from the school board or the school district for contracting COVID-19. And that civil immunity is subject to compliance with relevant guidance from your various regulatory agencies. So without further ado, I'm going to read, let me back up for just a second. So the immunity that you were granted is still intact because the state of emergency that was declared by Governor Cooper in Executive Order 116 in March of 2020 is still in existence. Therefore, the civil immunity still exists. What has changed is Health and Human Services has changed the face covering requirement, and therefore local boards now have the authority granted to them by their regulatory agencies and state law to make determinations about face coverings without fear of any civil lawsuit being brought by someone for contracting COVID-19. So let's
Right.
read the.
Brandon, one quick thing before you do that. So I know that in the toolkit, and I strongly encourage everyone to make sure, especially out in the public, if you've not pulled that up and looked at it, at some point, I guess we'll have more information about, I know quarantines may or may not be different, those who have to quarantine. Have you received any further guidance, any of that?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. So as far as quarantine requirements, which is separate and apart from face coverings or masks, the obligation of quarantining has changed, mostly because there has been the creation of new exceptions for why you would not be required to quarantine. So the general rule when it comes to quarantining after someone is exposed to someone with who's had a close contact, which is within 6 feet for at least 15 minutes over a cumulative 24-hour period, with someone who is determined positive with COVID-19, either through testing or through symptoms, there are 3 new exceptions to this rule. And so the general rule before these exceptions was that if you had close contact with someone, that you had to be out for a period of 10 days or 14 days, depending on whether or not you were yourself started exhibiting symptoms. So the 3 exceptions that now exist inside of the toolkit are individuals who are fully vaccinated and do not have symptoms do not need to quarantine after close contact. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, people who have tested positive for COVID-19 within the past 3 months and recovered and do not have symptoms do not have to quarantine. Okay? And the third and most relevant one for our discussion regarding masks are students who are not fully vaccinated after a close contact in a classroom or other school setting. If masks were being worn appropriately and consistently by both the person with COVID-19 and the potentially exposed person, do not need to quarantine. Okay? So those are the 3 exceptions as they currently exist in the updates regarding quarantine. I hope that answers your question, Madam Chair.
It did. Sorry to put that in there, but I just felt like it might be pretty important right now. So keep going.
Absolutely. Okay, so now unless there are further questions, I'm going to read the resolution that the board requested that I prepare regarding mask requirements. Pender County Board of Education resolution on COVID-19 and related mask requirements. Whereas the Pender County Board of Education has the privilege of serving more than 9,300 students and 1,200 staff members. And whereas all PCBOE employees, including teachers and other school personnel, are eligible for and were offered vaccines at special clinics for BCBOE employees, and whereas COVID-19 infection and mortality rates for children have shown to be lower than COVID-19 infection and mortality rates for adults. And whereas analysis has shown that staff to student and student to student infection is not the primary means of transmission among infected children, and whereas on July 20, 2021, the PCBOE issued the following statement regarding masks. The Pender County Board of Education adheres to the belief that parents should have the choice when it comes to the use of masks for our students. However, due to state law, we do not have authority to lift the mask mandate. We encourage our citizens to contact their elected officials in regard to Senate Bill 173. Whereas on July 21, 2021, Governor Roy Cooper announced the existing mask mandate for schools contained in Executive Order 220 would expire on July 30, 2021, and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services released an updated version of the Strong Schools NC Public Health Toolkit, parens K-12, that removed the requirement that North Carolina schools require face coverings or masks indoors. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Pender County Board of Education will not require face coverings or masks for students or staff beginning July 30, 2021. All students, staff, and community members are encouraged to make their own decisions regarding their public health into choosing whether to wear a mask. Harassment, discrimination, bullying, or intimidation based on any person's decision to wear or not wear a face covering or a mask will not be tolerated. That is the end of the resolution, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, sir. So at this time, we need to make a motion and take a vote on. So who would like to make the motion on this resolution regarding face coverings?
I make the motion to approve the resolution that was just read by our attorney regarding face coverings.
And Mr. Smith, that was you, correct?
That's correct, Kim Smith.
All right, Mr. Smith has made the motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. George will second.
Mr. George has seconded. All in favor, I'll go around and Ms. Burns? Yes. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
And even though I don't necessarily have a vote, I want to just make sure everybody's heard me also say yes. So without further ado, that has passed. So now we can move on to the comments from board members section.
Our kids as political pawns, and it's messed up. This is on y'all's head if our kids start to get sick. I really hope y'all know y'all are an embarrassment. Straight up an embarrassment. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Is there someone in the,
That person has just left, ma'am.
did this person just suddenly walk in?
They came in unannounced and then they just left. I don't believe they were signed up. I have no idea.
No,
Okay.
there was no public comments. They came in
Okay.
unannounced and they have since left.
All right, at this time, I'm going to ask each individual board member if you have any comments. Ms. Burns?
Yes, I do comment. First of all, I would like to thank all of the parents who have gone out of their way to email Governor Cooper and Senator Rabin about SB 173. You have, I believe that you have made your voice heard, and we thank you for giving us back for helping give us that power to make this decision today. And I just wanted to say also, when we made our announcement Tuesday, we had no idea the governor was going to have a press conference on Wednesday. And in other words, it might have been bad timing on our part, but we did not know that the governor was going to do this. So I think that concludes all I had to say, except one more time, again, to the parents who have taken the time to email. Thank you so much for supporting us.
All right, Mr. Smith?
I have no comment.
Mr. Hall?
No comment.
Mr. George?
Like Ms. Burns said, I appreciate all the parents that's been involved in this. I understand this is a emotional issue for several people, both for and against. My personal belief is in personal responsibility and personal decision for your own health and safety and that of your children and your family. I'm glad that we're moving forward. Hopefully we'll be through this soon. And thank you again to the parents and staff and everyone for what they've done the past year and what we continue to do.
I concur with what Ms. Burns and Mr. George have both said, and I just want to remind everybody that as the resolution was read, it is completely optional. If you choose to have your child, or if you're a staff member and you choose to wear a mask, then by all means, that is completely up to you, and we encourage you to do whatever you feel is necessary. I also just like to remind everyone that it was also read in the resolution that there will be no bullying or harassment, and that includes by adults or by children. And if that does occur, then you please follow the chain of command and make sure that you report that if that does happen. Okay, Dr. Hill, I believe you're on. Do you have any comments, sir? Oh, you may not be on. Okay, so at this time, we are going to move into the closed session part of the meeting. At this time, I need a board member to make a motion that we move into closed session.
Give me 2 seconds to find the motion.
Okay.
Benton County Board of Education will enter closed session subject to the advice from the attorney pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A1 and A6 to prevent the disclosure of confidential personnel information under General Statute 115C-319 and to consider matters relating to the initial employment of an individual employee. The board will also go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11A3 to consult with the board's attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege to consider confidential student matters as provided in NC General Statute 143-318-11A1 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 USCG 123G and NC General Statute 115C-402.
All right, thank you. Mr. George has made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Beth Burns.
Okay, Ms. Burns is seconding. All in favor? I'll go around again. Mr. Smith? Mr. Hall? Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Hall?
Yeah.
And Mr. George once again?
Yes.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Okay, at this time it's gone through. We're now moving into closed session. Thank you, everyone.
One. And now.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we come out of closed session.
Mr. George has made the motion, we come out of closed session. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Burns is seconded. All in favor? Mr. Smith? Mr. Hall?
Yeah.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Okay. Now I need a motion to approve the HR report as presented.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we approve the HR report as presented.
Mr. George has made the motion.
Second the motion.
Mr. Smith is seconded. All in favor? Mr. Hall?
Yeah.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Okay, we now need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Smith has made the motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Burns is seconded. All in favor? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Burns?